Hey, what's up? It's Mr. Honish here with Population Issues of Asia. Today we're going to look real quick at three different categories. We're looking at how population changes over time, population density, and then also a concept called urbanization. I'm going to be leading you through a few slides. I'm going to be screencasting that, trying to keep this one short. There is a sort of guided notes document that goes along with this. So I would encourage you to open that in Schoology, follow along as you watch it, but let's get started. So let's start with a little guessing game here. Countries that have the highest total population in Asia. Number one country, highest population overall. Can you guess it? Probably knew this one. China. Number two, right behind it. Again, I'm guessing you might have heard this before. India. Now the next two may be a little less common. Indonesia and Pakistan. Those four countries alone, of all the world's countries, those four countries combined are over 40% of the world's population. 4 out of every 10 people on Earth lives in one of these four countries. That is crazy. There's over 3 billion people in just those four countries. Now, my question is, will the population of these countries grow, stay steady, or decrease into the future? So let's take a look. China versus India, especially. If you look at the population pyramids, China versus India, you've got two very different shapes. Now, if we look at the bottom of a population pyramid, remember those are our youngest age groups, 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, etc. So if we look at this is how many kids there are compared to the people that would be the age of the parents. In China, there's more parent-aged people than kids. In India, it has been growing. Now, notice this starts to get a little bit more flat. So what does this tell us? China's population, is it growing, staying steady, or decreasing? Well, over time, we might start to see a little bit of a decrease. India, is it growing, staying steady, or decreasing? It's growing, but it looks like that growth might be slowing down. So those are interesting trends to watch. At this point, India is growing faster than China. And as the number 2 ranked overall population, they might catch China very, very soon. If you look at Asia compared to other areas around the world, this shows growth over time. You've heard a lot lately about flattening the curve, meaning slowing growth. You can see that with Asia here. They were growing, and now look at what happens to the curve. It has flattened, and then projecting into the future, this is where we're at right about now. Projecting into the future, that curve is going to flatten and start to decrease a little bit. What continent, I just covered it up, what continent is set to grow the most in the coming decades? Well, that would be red, Africa. Why? If you think about reasons for having a lot of children, reasons for growth, a lot of it has to do with their standard of living and their levels of wealth. Those are ideas that we've talked about before. Lower GDP, lower standard of living in Africa, more children still being born. That trend not going to change probably anytime in the next couple decades. Asia, however, going to be going through that leveling off process. Now let's take a look at population density. This is a population density map of Asia. Again, dark red, 1 dot represents 100,000 people. So where you see a lot of dots clustered together, that means more people. All you kids that have finished your Satara challenges at 100%, China, India, 2 most populated countries overall, lots of red dots there. But I really want you to think about reasons for this. Think about physical geography, think about trade, think about how to support life. So really with population density, we're looking at why do people live where they live. So look at where the population's clustered most heavily. Now if we advance this, here's the map of Asia physically overall. Usually when we look at these in class, we look at green space versus the tan or the brown space. I mean, if you look at China, for instance, green space, and this is where the tan space is. India, Look at this area where hardly anyone lives. Corresponds with this right here. Meanwhile, you get the green areas, much more densely populated. If you look at Japan, why does Japan have well over 5,000 people per square kilometer in this area right here? And this would be Tokyo. But why is it so high there when even right next to it in the center, it's really not much going on? Again, think about physical geography reasons. If you compare it side to side and you look at elevation, you realize that this is the most mountainous area of Japan. That would correspond to right through here. This is a lower elevation area right next to a very good natural harbor. So where are people going to live? In the mountains where there's rocky soil and you can't grow food? Or on a lower, flatter area with good transportation and trade access? Clearly, this is a better place for people to live. It's not random where people decide to live. China, 94% of China's population lives east of this blue line. Again, we saw before with the physical geography, this area, very, very dry. This area is full of river valleys and a lot of lower elevation, and it has the access to the ocean for transportation and trade. Why don't people move to the west to spread out this population? Why would you live isolated from the rest of the world when you have all the best farmland and transportation connection here? So this isn't going to change. Just because the space is there doesn't mean it's worth moving from the eastern half to the western half. So it's not a very successful way to spread out the population density. If we look at our third category, this one is kind of new. We haven't really looked at this much yet this year. Urbanization. Urbanization is the process of moving from rural areas to urban areas. Basically, that means moving from the country to the city. Now, the links that you just saw on that last slide take you to this website, Our World in Data. They've got an entire section here on urbanization, but I just wanted to point out the fact at how much urbanization has changed the layout of where people live. Do more people live in urban or rural areas? The easiest way to read this is blue means that more people in those countries are living in majority rural areas. The red countries are where most people are living in urban. I'm just going to play this starting in 1957, and you can watch the years change and just notice how more of the blues are turning into reds as time progresses. So you see the year changing up here into the 70s. All of a sudden, more reds show up. And notice where they're showing up. We've got African countries, and we've got Asian countries. Now, as you project into the future, what is going to happen? More and more and more. By 2050, there's really only a handful of countries left that are going to have more people living in rural areas than urban. Urbanization stats and data are all fine and well, but really think about what the impact of this is. With more and more people moving from the country to the city, there are a lot of factors, a lot of things related to geography as a whole. First of all, most people in rural areas are farmers. So what's happening to farm production? Are you still able to produce enough food? As people move into the city, think about the physical space. Is it going to become overcrowded? Will there be enough housing? Economically speaking, will there be enough jobs available? What about the transportation logistics? Are the highways or the train systems or the airports able to handle this influx of new people? What about pollution? What about the environment? Is there enough green space in these areas? There is a lot to consider here. Honestly, this is why the job of urban planning exists. People need to think ahead. People need to think about potential growth in cities and make sure that those areas are planned out for that. But that's all I have for now. So good luck. Have fun with that. Hope you guys are staying safe and enjoying learning at home. I will catch you next time.